Okay, so today I'm going to be providing a newfound approach to the cross step, which I've found out just recently, and I found it to be really useful, and I hope it can translate really well and improve your surfing. If you do find this video and the channel itself pretty useful, then please feel free to subscribe. But my name's Ben Considine, and this is the Sunday Glide. I'm going to start off here just with a few key examples of the common problems that we do see with cross-stepping, and I suppose what this cue will aim to help with. And then we'll actually go through some practice. I'm going to hop out on the board and we're going to go through what the practice of this will look like. Some good little drills that can help you translate this into your surfing on land. And then we'll actually go through some examples of my own surfing where I use this. The main thing that I think this helps with is staying smooth and maintaining control throughout our cross steps, which I know is one of the hardest things. So I really hope that this can help you surfing in this way. I'd also love to see and hear how it goes for you. So if you give this a go within the next couple of weeks, make sure you come back and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear how it's going. Let's get into it. So for cross-stepping, I usually find there's 3 common problems, and you may have heard me speak about this on the channel before. The first one is the fact that we hesitate and lean backwards. Now, when we lean backwards, it becomes really tricky to commit. If we want to make sure we're staying balanced, it's really important to make sure that our weight comes over the front foot and that we have a forward translation for every step along the way to the nose. The second one that typically happens is our legs come really straight. This is a problem because I like to think of the legs almost like our shock absorption. If we have nice bent and compressed legs, then this will allow us to withstand all the little lumps and bumps in the water and all the wash that might try and knock us off. And if we have the bent knees, we can withstand this really nicely, stay well balanced, stay low and compressed close to the board. And the last little part of this is actually our step length. So if we have a small step, I like to think that this actually decreases our base of support, and so our balance is going to be a lot harder rather than if we take a bigger step. Your bigger step just increases your base of support and increases your balance in that way as well. Now, this cue that I wanted to use today is actually to land the toe on the board first. So if we're thinking about our usual walking, we might do a heel toe in terms of the heel makes contact with the ground first and then the toe makes contact with the ground. And if we translate this into longboarding and the cross step, this actually does become a little bit of a problem. If we look at the problems that I just said with the normal cross step, how we can land with straight legs, how our step's not big enough, then this is actually something that's promoted when we use that heel to toe contact on the cross step. If we're thinking about landing with our cross step and we land on our heel, inevitably we'll have to straighten out that leg to make sure that we get that heel in contact with the board first. Whereas if we use the toe, we can actually keep a really nice bent knee and we can better withstand or absorb that weight onto the board. So it's not so much of a thud and not so hard, and it can be a much smoother transition for the cross step. The other thing here is usually if we're landing on the heel, because we are extending that leg out all the way, I just find that our steps are smaller and we don't carry that weight forwards either. Inevitably, if we use that toe to land on the ground first, then what we're going to be promoting is our whole body weight coming over and landing with that foot. So we can think our chest stays over the leading foot as we're doing the cross step, rather than the chest staying behind and we're just poking that foot forwards, which is where we lean backwards, get the small step, legs are straight. So let's try that and see how it might translate into your practice. So the drill that I like to use here is simply practicing your cross-stepping forwards and backwards. Go nice and slow though, and go up and back, utilizing that toe first position. The position that you really want to make sure that this is helping with is making sure that we're keeping a big step and having our chest follow our front foot. So the chest not lagging behind as you're cross-stepping forwards, but actually coming through and following through with that step. We also want to try and minimize impact as we're doing this. So the step landing on our toe should be nice and light. I like to think like someone trying to stay nice and quiet, walking indoors, and you're not trying to make a big thudding sound with your heel. This is the same thing that we need to be trying approaching with this cross step. Try and make a really light impact so that no one can hear your steps, okay? Make them really, really soft, and this is really, really going to help minimize any sort of unnecessary wobbling on the board. So going too much on the heel side or toe side rail because we're landing really firm. Wanted to stay nice and soft, nice and balanced. So let's give that a go, and then just become comfortable with it on land. I always like to think, be comfortable with something on land before we try it out in the water, if possible. For these things like our pop-ups and our cross steps, which we can practice really well on land, make sure we're comfortable with it here, and then we can translate it out into the water. So I also just wanted to try and translate this into some examples of my own surfing. I think this is something that I have been using for a while, and I've been trying to articulate how we do these cross steps in a bit of a different way up until now. And I think they're still correct and they still work, but this is a nice cue that will help to bring it all together. So I just wanted to use some footage here to consolidate how this method looks in practice out in the water on a longboard. Like with anything new, it will take time to get used to, especially if this does vary from how you're currently attempting your cross steps, but I do really like this to produce a clean, smooth and light cross step. The first point I wanted to make here is that this method goes whether you're on your backhand or your forehand. You can see in the first few examples here on my backhand that my toe is pointed out and outstretched or plantar flex to contact the board first, rather than having a toe up ankle position to allow the heel to make contact first. This produced a really nice soft rolling effect of our foot on the board, which can reduce the thudding of our feet on the board. And you can see a similar thing here on the forehand, where the toe pokes out and makes a soft contact with the board. The other things to take note of here, as we discussed earlier in the piece, is how the cross step not only allows it to become nice and smooth, but it enables the knees to stay nice and bent where needed. The momentum is kept going forwards throughout the cross step phase by committing weight forwards over the leading foot as well, as it's very hard to apply pressure to the toes on the board without bringing the chest forwards to some degree as well. The last one I wanted to show you here as well is how this type of cross step can work not only for your 4 steps but also the leaping or the 2 steps. In this example, I'm leaping forwards from essentially the back third of the board to the very nose, and I'm able to soften the landing by using my toes. If this were the other way around and I actually landed on my heels, I feel like it could have been firstly less steady but also produced a large thudding effect on the board, which may have even brought the board out of trim. So it's really, really handy to use it in this sort of scenario as well. Again, this is a one approach, and I just like to make sure that I provide as much clarity with this sort of stuff as possible. Some people might like this approach, some people might find that the previous ones that we've gone through may be helpful already. It may also be something that you're already doing, you're already landing with your toe on the board, and if that's the case, then just go from there and try and use some of the other things that we've spoken about on the channel to improve that cross step also. But for those of you who haven't, who think that this might be a really good key to open up and unlock some more progression with your cross stepping, feel free to try this in the water and let me know how it goes.